Hi, this is Janice. This is the next pre-lesson for my class. This one's going to go over a few things, including how to make an action and some fundamental things of Nik. Let's first look at where we find our Nik selective tool. Go under File, Automate, Nik selective tool, and you'll see it right there. If you close it by hitting the X, you can always bring it back up under Nik, File, Automate, Nik selective tool. It's already open, so it's grayed out. In here we have Define, Vivesa, HDR, Analog Pro, all of these programs. We can toggle them up or down. I won't go into Define because I use Topaz Denoise instead. It's a little bit better program. I'll use Define from time to time when I need to use control points, but we'll go into that in class. We won't do that here. Once we have the selective tool open, what we're going to need to do is just click on the Vivesa. So go ahead and click on Vivesa. I'm going to make that bigger by hitting the little plus key. And let's go over the interface a little bit first. In the interface, we have our views. We have a before and after, which is side by side. And then we have here before and after where we're looking at the whole image. And we can zoom in onto the image into different areas. And we can also rotate that so it's side by side. But I'm going to go back to the single view. I tend to do the single view on here. Now remember that when we're zoomed in like this, we can always zoom back out by using the keys that we already programmed on our Wacom tablet on our other lesson. So I'm just going to go to the second button from the bottom, which said Fit Frame. Click Fit Frame, and it's going to make that fit into the frame automatically. Over here we have the arrow tool, the hand tool, and the zoom keys. Now the arrow tool is the tool that you'll need to be in whenever you're working on a control point. If you put a control point in and you can't address it so it won't come up or you can't change it, it's because you're in the hand tool instead of the arrow tool. And one quick way to get into the arrow tool is to see I'm in the hand tool now. I can go A and it automatically puts me into the arrow tool. Also remember, on the pen on the Wacom tablet, we programmed the little switch on the pen to be the hand tool temporarily. And all the filters work the same way. And what's really nice is the majority of the filters out there have similar interfaces. So when you learn this on Nik, it'll work on Topaz most of the time, it'll work on Perfectly Clear, it will work on some of the On1. So a lot of them have incorporated it. And all of these tools are actually the same tools that are in Photoshop. So let's go ahead and make that fit the frame again. Over on the side here, we have Add Control Point and all these adjustments. We can adjust the entire image with the global adjustments just by sliding them in and out and adjusting them here. But usually I've adjusted most of my global to begin with in Adobe Camera Raw before I've gotten to this point. And I'm only using Vivesa to make some things lighter and other things darker and balance things out. Something that I would have to do lots of different layers if I was doing it within Photoshop. So let's go ahead and look at adding a control point. Now remember, on our tablet we've also made the top button add a control point. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a control point. I'm going to put one up in there, and then I'll put one in here. Okay, and the reason I did two of them right away is because of how we're going to be working. Let's go ahead and hit the A key. Okay. On that control point, I want to make this lighter. It was early in the morning, and the sky went a little darker blue than I wanted it to. It's just because of how wide the lens is. I want to balance that up because I don't want to draw attention away from the mountains, because the mountains are the subject. So let's go ahead and expand this out. And expand that out means it's going to influence more the image area. So you can see it influences a lot more of the image area, but it also lightened this up in here. Now if I want to anchor that down so it doesn't influence that, I just put another control point. And that just is going to further refine what this is selecting, which is a solid smooth blue, versus this one that has a slight blue cast, but a lot of texture. So you can see the difference. On this one here, I want to expand it out so the two talk to one another. That way there's a gradual transition between the two. You'll also notice that now the sliders say selective. I want to point out you can adjust any active control point right here. So you can see this one is active, and if I want to make that darker there, I can do that right there. So you can see it, I can do it here. Another place you can do it is any of these when they're a little pale yellow, that's the one that's active, and you can use your left right arrows to adjust them. So I can make that darker, or I can do it lighter by the left right arrows on the keyboard. We can also come in and adjust contrast, all those different things within here. Right below all the control points is the control point list. This will show me how much of the area and what it's influencing. It actually shows a mask that it creates. So if I want to see this control point, and you'll see it becomes active up there, I can turn that on, and you can see it's not influencing this down here, but it is here. So since I don't want this to be influenced so much, I'm going to expand that out, and you can see it grabs more, and then I can also add more of them. And how am I doing that so fast without touching add control point? Well, remember we programmed our pen so that the front was either Alt or Option. So if you hold that button on the front of the pen, it will automatically duplicate the control point. So for instance, if I had wanted to duplicate this control point and change the brightness of a particular area, let's turn those off. Okay. If I wanted to change the brightness of this area that's closer to the mountains, I can duplicate that, and it'll add that same adjustment that I had here to that one. So that's how you can do a quick new control point. So for instance, if I go here, and I make my brightness a little bit darker, but I want to do it down here, I can just hold my Alt or my Option key and bring it down there. And I can say, well, I think I need it a little further. So it's real easy to be able to adjust that. Now we also have these little buttons up here that are called Group and Ungroup. And what Group and Ungroup means is I can control a series of control points. So I can grab these, hold my Shift key, grab that one, grab that one, grab that one. Don't actually have to click on it. All you can do is just drag your pen across it, and it'll just do a little mini marquee. Now I want to group them. You can also speed key this. This is a Command G, and it'll group them together. I can make this in here a little bit brighter or darker, depending upon whatever direction I want to go. I can add more saturation, and I can make it warmer so it doesn't look so blue. I'll back that off just a little bit. There we go. We also have another slider that's important to be able to use within Pervasive, which is the shadow adjustment. And I'll just put that right there in a shadow. I'm going to open up the shadow, and you'll see that it opens up the shadow just like a shadow adjustment within ACR. Let's get that right down in there. But the problem is that sometimes it'll make everything around there a little bit lighter. And since it might make everything in that area a little bit lighter, and let's add some structure too. I may want to actually, I like the darkness that's there, I just want some detail in it. So I'll just bring the brightness down. And it sounds counterintuitive that I open up the shadows but then I darken down the brightness. Well, what I'm doing is changing that center, that middle point of where the light and dark is. So I still have the detail, but I'm not lightening up the areas around it. So let's look at a before and after in that area so you can see. We'll just go ahead and zoom in. Grab the arrow key. See how we have lost detail? And now we have detail. It's very subtle, but it'll make a big difference in your images, because when a person views your images, they like to wander around within the image and explore all the different parts. I'll go ahead and go the whole thing. Now I'm going to kind of polish this one off by darkening down the mountains there. We're going to add some contrast and make it a little more pristine, give it some structure, and let's see here. I want to make this a little more saturated. There we go. Okay, so here's our before, there's our after, This is using control points in Viveza. Now, after I'm all done and I want to apply this to that layer that it automatically created, I don't want to click brush because right now that's broken. So we want to go ahead and go around the little broken part of this particular tool. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. When I click OK, it's still going to apply what the filter is doing, and it's going to apply it to a new layer. It's just not going to keep the mask. The mask is what was broken, and it's just a fundamental command in there, but I'm not a programmer, so I can't take care of that for everyone, and I don't have the rights to it. I do have a great workaround, and this workaround is perfect because I use it on all filters, because some filters don't make masks or layers, and so this little tool, we'll just call it our little action brush tool, that will put a mask on and give us a brush and put the brush in the right mode. So first I'm just going to grab the stamp tool because I want to tell it to use the brush, and that it needs to be a command that I put in the action. So let's go ahead and record an action. Go to Windows and we're going to go to Actions. So we have actions. I have my action set, so I'm going to go ahead and trash that because I'm going to start over again so you can see the steps I did. So let's go ahead and do a new set, and I'm going to call this Janice Actions. And if you don't want to do the actions, that's fine. I can give you the actions as well. So we'll go ahead and click OK. The next thing I want to do is actually make a new action. So we'll go ahead and make a new action. Okay, and this one is going to be our mask and brush tool. Now we also want to be able to assign it a speed or key or function key. I'm going to go ahead and make it F1. I'm going to add shift and command so that it makes it a little more complex so that I don't accidentally do it on something else. I'm going to go ahead and start recording that. Hit record. So it's now made it, and it's starting to record because you'll see it's red. Black will make us stop. So next we want to put a conceal all mask. We don't want to show this. We want to be able to paint it in where we want it and hold it back where we don't want it. To do that, all you need to do is hold your Option key and click on your mask, and it will automatically do that. Now remember that we last used the stamp tool or whatever tool we happen to be, but we want to make sure that Photoshop is telling it to automatically select the right tool. So since I wanted to select the brush tool to paint or erase on the mask, so we can go now to the brush tool, and you'll see that now it shows select brush. But if I already had the brush selected, it wouldn't work. So I'd have to do something like add the stamp tool and then go back to the brush. So it was add the brush. And you go, oh no, you've just totally destroyed your action. You're going to have to start over. Now I'm going to show you a trick on how to fix those kinds of things. The other thing I want to do is make sure that I make my swatch selection. So I'm going to reset it so that it's white over black, and just as a quick click, and that automatically makes my brush white, and I'm going to stop. So now my brush is white. I can paint on the mask, and when I paint on the mask there, then I can just tell it whatever strength I want by the pressure sensitivity of the tablet. So there it is, before and after, with that particular tool. Okay, so how do we get rid of this clone and brush and that kind of stuff in there? Because we don't want it anymore. Well, the really easy way to fix an action if you've accidentally put something in there you don't want is just to grab that and put it to the trash. We don't need two brushes, so I'll just put it to the trash. Now it's all set. So let's go ahead and test that action we just made. I'm going to go ahead and trash that. There we go. Delete it. And now we're going to test it. Go ahead and select that action and play it. And you can see it did that, and it automatically gave me a brush, and it hid everything, and I can just go right in and do my brush tool. Now, how do we program it to be on our tablet? Well, remember when we were programming the tablet, we had what was called a radial menu. As we program the radial menu, now we can put a command in the radial menu for this particular action. So to do that, just click in System Preferences, or if you're in Windows, you want to make sure you go to your program files and go to your Wacom tablet. When you're in this particular interface, click on Functions, and we want to go to On-Screen Controls. We want to make sure we're in the radial menu. And you can see here, I went to keystroke. I just typed it in just like I did my other commands on everything else. So it was Shift, Command, or Control, Shift if you're in Windows. Apple is Command and Shift. And if you're on a laptop, your F keys aren't dedicated like a keyboard. So what you're going to need to do is hold down your FN key, which is your function key, which shifts those into the F keys. So you would hold Shift, Command, FN, and then the F1, and that's going to put that in. And then type in what it is and click OK. Now that's all set. Let's go ahead and close this down so I don't see it. Now if I want to add that particular mask to it, all I need to do now is go to my heads up. I have my radial menu, click on it. It'll pop up wherever my cursor is. And click Add Mask. And you'll see it add the mask and the brush, and we're all set. You can see how easy that is. Now we have it all programmed on the tablet. Let's go ahead and dump this because I want to show you now the next program that's really important to learn that Nik has that nobody else has, and that is Silver Efex Pro. So let's go ahead and click on Silver Efex Pro. And with Silver Efex Pro, again, it's going to create that layer automatically for me, but I never brush Silver Efex Pro in, so I'm going to always just click OK. It's not going to be a big deal. With Silver Efex Pro, I can now come in and say, well, let's see what we want to do here. Silver Efex Pro has a whole bunch of presets. Can't do it with Evasive, but with Silver Efex you can. We can click all, and you can see all of these. So you can go in there, you can use your arrow keys, and you can scroll through and see how the different ones are affecting the image. And you can see quite a bit of difference from preset to preset as you're going through it. You can see some of them have frames, so you can see it has a frame to it. This one doesn't, so you can have all of that. You also can put in here just the ones that are more the modern, current styles. You could go to Vintage, which has some very unusual effects, and Recently Used, or Favorites. Favorites are any that you put a little star on. If you turn it off, it's no longer a favorite. See, I can turn them off there, and then I can go to my all and say, well, neutral is one of my favorites. And let's see here. The other one is one of my favorites is, oh, come on, it's down here. Dynamic Full Spectrum. So that's another one of my favorites. So I just click on it, and it will automatically apply. So let's go back here to neutral. Let's go to favorites. It makes it easier for me to get to neutral. That is the preset library. We can import some from other people that have created them. And we also have a history. And so you can see all the different things we did. And I can go back all the way to my neutral state, which is where I started, and ignore all of this history, and it'll start recording over again, or I can go to whatever point in history I want to start. So that is all of our presets over there and the history tool. You can see this is the same as Vivesa with the compare button and the zoom. Now over here are my global adjustments. All of these are global adjustments. Control points are a little further down the list here, okay? And the upper ones are our global adjustments. And these global adjustments can really drastically change how the image is looking. I don't think I need that library anymore, so I'll go ahead and shrink that down. In here, I can adjust my overall brightness of the image. I can change my highlights. We can just bring those highlights down, midtones, shadows, just like Photoshop. But it also has what's called dynamic brightness, which is quite a bit different. I can bring that up, and you can see that it's making it brighter, but not in the same way as brightness. So you can see brightness here. See how that flattens it out? But if I do dynamic brightness, it's not flattening out the image. So it's keeping that white point and the black point, and it's adjusting it in between. This brightness does not keep the white point and black point. Now we want to look at contrast. Contrast is split up here as well, and it's got some different commands. So we have amplify whites, amplify blacks, and soft contrast. And then we have our standard contrast. Standard contrast functions very much like Photoshop, but soft contrast acts a lot different. So I'm going to come in and bring up that, and you can see how if I bring it down or I bring it up. Be careful not to go too far, because you can get halos from it. And you can see the halo there where this light area is bleeding into that. And it's just creating some totally different look, which is quite nice. I may want to max up my blacks. There we go. And that looks pretty good. If I want to add more detail or less detail, I can. But lots of times I only do that when I'm actually working in control points. I'll add just a hair in my highlights where the mountains are to begin with, and a little bit of fine structure. There we go. Watch that you don't too much, because then you might get some noise coming back into the image. Now we have our control points. Our control points can do a lot for us. So just like we did with Viveza, we have the ability to shrink down the list and make a longer list and see all of everything it has. It has brightness, contrast, structure, amplify whites, amplify blacks, fine structure, and selective colorization. Now, selective colorization means it's just going to keep the color, so I can bring back the color blue. That's whatever the control point's affecting. This is not an image I would do that with, so we're not going to use that. But I am going to go in here, and I'm going to amplify my whites in here, okay, so that sky is matching the rest of the sky a little bit better, so it doesn't look excessively dark. And I'm going to duplicate that just like I did in Viveza by holding my Alt or my Option key and dragging it over to the other side. Now this is competing with this, which is important, so we'll go ahead and add another control point. Go ahead and make that darker. There we go. And I'm going to duplicate that down, and see how bringing those things down is bringing the attention back to the mountains. And I'll put one down in here as well. There we go. And then on the mountains themselves, I want to actually amplify the blacks because it's looking a little bit muddy. So amplify the blacks, give it some contrast so we get a nice strong black, and then I'll just darken it just a little bit. There we go. So now the mountains don't look like they're in haze any longer. I'm going to go ahead and click Add Control Point on the buttons there. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up just a bit, not too much. And then I'm going to put another control point on here. And then in between, I want to put a control point that actually darkens so that it's pulling the eye through there. This one I went a little bit too. I need to go ahead and duplicate that setting, make that a little bit darker. I'm going to go into the shadow there, and I'm going to amplify the whites, bring some structure into it so I can bring some detail into that little area. And let's put some detail back in here. There we go. Here we can do a comparison. And notice that it compares not to the color image, but it compares it to the neutral image. If we want to compare it to the color image, we can do so in the history by changing it to the original image there. So now it's comparing it to the color, or we can compare it to the neutral. So that's how you would change that. Now let's scroll down here about some of the other things that we have available within Silver Efex Pro. One of the things we have available is a color filter. This filter works just like a filter on the front of the camera would if we were shooting black and white film. So we can put a red filter, it's going to make the sky darker, it's going to make all the red rocks lighter. We have the yellow filter, so you can see each done, and you can do any filter in between. It's like owning every Ratten filter ever made and every strength. So I'm going to just go back to neutral there. But I just wanted to show you where that is. Right below that, we have film types. And film types had certain grain and contrast and color sensitivities. So all of that is in there. So under here we have the sensitivities, we have the sensitivity curves, and the levels all built into one. So we can go in here, we can actually look at what each one of these film types does to the image. And then you can go forward from there. So if you like the old Tri-X look, you can go to Tri-X. You can see how the grain structure is. If you want more grain, you can add more. I don't want so much red sensitivity, so I'm just going to bring some red sensitivity down. And sometimes the curves here is a little off, so I'll just give it a little tweak in the toe there. There we go. And so you can adjust it. Now I'm just going to turn that off because I really prefer having the better dynamic that I have from digital. Film, you always had to have little compromises. I mean, while it can be a creative tool and really work wonderfully, we have things now that we can far surpass anything that film did. So let's go ahead and shrink that down and see what else we have in here. So we have finishing adjustments after film types. Finishing adjustments include toning, vignettes, edge burning, and image borders. So these are kind of what we did to finish off the print. After we made a really good print in the darkroom, we did all these other things. So right in here, we can adjust the silver toning, and we have all these different silver toners that we can pick from. So say we want to pick a sepia. We can adjust how much of the black is still black and some of it, how much of the white, how clean it is. So I want to make the paper toning off. I don't want the whites to be any pink or yellow or anything. I want my whites to be nice and clean. And you can see how that sparkled it up just by taking the paper toner off. Then I want to adjust the balance. So I want it to be above the 50% gray. So as this goes up, you'll see that less and less of the highlight area is being toned. So I'm just going to bring that just up a little bit. I do want the silver, so anything that has some gray tones in it does have a little more toning. So I'm going to amp that up just a little bit. So you can see there how strong we do it. We can adjust it just here. And as we adjust the silver, the strength can never be more than the silver toning. And the same goes there. So you can see that that is actually adjusting both of them at the same percentage. So let's go down here now and look at vignette. Vignette is just what it is. We can do a circle or rectangle. We have presets built in there. We also have how much we want to either lighten it or darken it. So we can make it look like we fog the camera or not. And double clicking always will make it go back to 0. We can change it from a circle to a rectangle. So let's darken it down. And you can see how much there. And then we can change the size, so how much it comes in or out. Okay. So I'll go ahead and reset that. Another thing that we have, well, I forgot. Oh, we can change the center point too. So I can go in here, I can put a rectangle, and I can say it's down here so that it's not creating any vignette down on the bottom there. So that's where you place it. So you can place it anywhere you want just by clicking place center, and then you can adjust it. So you can see how you can change your image by changing that vignette. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. Okay. And I don't know why that isn't working, but you know, that's something that happens sometimes. Okay, so the next thing is burning edges. Now burning edges was just like when we worked in the darkroom. We would just burn one edge or a second edge. We usually didn't do all 4 because I always believe that you need to leave open spaces for the eye to enter and exit your image. So I might want to burn from the bottom because this is a little bit too light. So I can say how much and then how big it is and then how soft the transition. So you can see there that it's just burning that down there quite nicely. And again, see how it's pulling the eye into here because we're darkening that down. And then we have image borders. Image borders is kind of fun. We have all different kinds, different interactions in it. And some have some black edges, some are just soft, and they are very organic. So they have a lot going on. And in here we can vary the borders just by clicking Vary Borders. Okay? And when we vary it, remember that if you missed one that you thought you liked and you wanted to go back to, you can go to History and it's there. Let's go ahead and shrink that back down. Okay? And so that's the border. So I don't really want to do too much of a border. I'm just going to change that size a little bit up because I didn't want to go into the image there. And you can change the spread. That's how much black there is. You can make it really, really rough. Okay, or you can make it kind of smooth. So it does various things. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off because I really don't want a border on it. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off my toning. So let's go ahead and turn the toning off. Because I want to show you down on the bottom here we have some really cool tools. So if you ever studied zone system, we have all the zones here. So we have zone 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 is pure white. If we go to 10, we see that we don't have any pure white. But if I go to 0, I do have some pure black. If I wanted to prevent that from blocking up in printing, I may go in up here into this tonality protection, make those shadows be a little less blocky, because they might print up really blocked up. Another thing we can do is change our shadows and make them a little lighter as well. Now, it's good to have some black. You got to have some black in there, but you don't want to have it all block up. So I'll go turn that off, and we can check and see wherever we have all of our different separations between our different tones. So let's go in here, and I want to make sure that I have some pure white. And I don't have any nice clean white in there. And since I had a control point somewhere on the snow here, we're going to make that nice and bright. So go in there, add some contrast to it. I don't want it to be a pure white. Let's make sure it's a 9. And I see some of it coming up in there, so I do have that a 9. Give it a little structure. And go ahead and add a little more contrast to it. And amplify the whites. And we're going to amplify the blacks as well. So see, now we have a lot more going on in there. So go ahead and make that fit the frame. There we go. Click anywhere. And we can see our before and after. That is everything that I wanted to go over in this pre-class for the Nik filters in Silver Effects. We just click OK. It'll apply it to a separate layer. Now, what's really nice also, I wanted to point out, is sometimes working in Silver Effects Pro is really great on your color images. And why it is really great working on color images is that we can go ahead and apply these contrasts and adjustments to our color image just by changing the blend mode of that layer to luminosity. And now everything that we did in the black and white is now done on the color. You can see, look at how that brought up all that nice detail in the mountains. We darken this forward area. We now have our eye coming up the arch, falling in through the mountains, and we've got it coming back out. So we have it all working quite beautifully. So hope this helps you out in learning some of the steps that we're going to use in class.